just to know that you pray my name. I'm like most clergy, I visit those who are unable to visit us. And I always share the same news with them. That is that their names are in prayers of the people and that every Sunday we pray their name. One congregant recently, elderly and bedbound, she hasn't been here since I've been here in a year. She said this. She said, "Just to know that you pray my name with everyone present, those who know me, which every year are fewer and fewer, and those who have never met me, makes me feel so loved, so honored, so special. It's the highlight for me of your every visit. I can feel that love every Sunday morning too, even though I'm not with you. I feel it. I feel your love. It is better," she said, "than all the ministrations of nursing staff and family to know that in the congregation you pray my name." You know, death never renders life meaningless, ever. Today is Remembrance Day. It's the 100th anniversary of armistice of the First World War. This is what war brought us in the 20th century, the most bloody of all centuries. 123 million people died in wars in the 20th century. 37 million military, 27 million civilians, 41 million more by genocide or mass murder, and in the last decade alone, 2 million children have died. This is in the 21st century. 4 to 5 million have been disabled. 12 million have been left homeless, and 1 million have been orphaned. War is absolutely permanent now. There are 60 wars happening as we gather this morning. Some of them large and some of them very small. Most horrifying about it is that our economies, particularly our neighbors to the south, are tied into the continuous war machine. You know, Eisenhower, he was hardly a lefty pacifist. After the Second World War, he said, "The greatest threat to America's democracy is the military-industrial complex." In the First World War, which is when Remembrance Day started, 40 million died. 40 million. There were 8 million in Canada at the time. We lost about 61,000 Canadians. And historians tell us that about 7% of our entire population at the time was in uniform. And trust me, those that came back didn't come back all as war heroes, particularly if they were people of color. They came back to racism still. If they were the 4,000 First Nations that signed up, they came back to colonialism still. And of course, LGBTQ folk didn't exist and came back to hatred too. And they were so young. The youngest combatant, the youngest casualty who died, was a British young soldier, this is that we know of, Sidney Levis. He died at the Battle of the Somme in 1916. He was 12. He was 12 because many signed up pretending to be 18. Sidney, today we hold your name in prayer, just to know that you pray my name. But of course it's daunting, isn't it? How can we pray the names when there's so many, when there are millions and millions and millions of them? Some you can read about, and I invite you to in our halls, on our walls. Some we can read about, or even read. Their words still exist, like the Canadian soldier Harold Watts. He wrote this: "We live in a trench. We wear our respirators because of the awful smell of the dead. I'll never get the sight out of my eyes, and it will be an everlasting nightmare if I am spared to come home to tell you about it, but I cannot possibly write about it, as I can't describe these things. Harold, we hold your name in prayer." You should know that women spearheaded the tradition of wearing red poppies, and of course they based it on Flanders Fields, but women after the First World War who also lost and died. They decided to raise money because the government wasn't stepping in as it should for those who came home as casualties, and so they started selling poppies. Of course, In Flanders Field was written by a Canadian physician, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, as an anguished anti-war poem. Important to remember that. As an anti-war poem. So we would never forget the carnage. So that World War I would be the last war. That was his prayer in this poem. It was a call to peace. It was never, ever meant to be a glorification of war. John, we remember your name in prayer. And then, of course, we remember today the peace warriors. Those who have, as Jesus says, laid down their lives. And he meant for the sake of peace. He wasn't talking about in battle. He was talking about those who refuse, who don't fight, who give their lives in peace. And so it's unusual, and yet I believe it's fitting today that we name our dead, those known personally to us, because the pain of loss of someone you love, that's going to happen to all of us, allows us to begin to comprehend the horror of the huge and unnatural loss in war. Cruel death, violent death, must be remembered, never again. We must insist in the midst of these powers and principalities, and we must state it over and over and over again every year until peace comes. So as we name those we pray for, we think of the millions praying for the millions, saying their names. We know that each one is beloved. We know that when we loved and lost each one, they were a unique rendition of the image of God. In Yad Vashem in Israel, I've been lucky enough to go to the museum, the Holocaust Museum. There is a children's section where the names that are known of the children that were killed in the camps are repeated continuously, 24/7. You hear these names in the air as you're in there praying. Yet death never renders life meaningless. I had the honor of being part last weekend of a Christian and Muslim ring of peace around the city shul. It's just about a block away. And I was also able that day to attend the service of Rabbi Aviva Goldberg at the Miles Nadal Jewish Community Center just at the corner here, our other neighbor. It was, of course, in response to the shooting at the Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh. We were reminded, and we should be reminded, this is the 80th anniversary also of Kristallnacht. This is the night when Jewish homes and businesses were attacked, ransacked, and not only their homes and businesses, but their synagogues, their precious Torah scrolls were taken out and destroyed. It was an attack on their faith. And we know that the church has a history of anti-Semitism. And so in our hearts today, we pledge to be like that tiny percentage of the German and European church that defied Hitler, the confessing church. They were the only true followers of Jesus. Then as now, the Christian right is neither. As we pray the names of the victims killed while at worship, we're going to do that too. We should remember that the most potent prayer for them is real gun control. The mothers and the parents at Thousand Oaks said that over and over again. Make your prayers and thoughts real, do something. It's not enough just to pray and think. Today we'll pray the names, of course. Remembrance is just that after all. It's remembering. It's bringing those who are no longer physically present back into the pews with us. We can imagine them sitting here, filling in among us. We should picture them and what it feels like to them to hear their precious names said aloud. Death never renders life meaningless. Just to hear you pray my name. No greater gift, yes. I warned that those who are pictured and remembered And during communion, you're absolutely welcome to come up if you haven't already done so and place your picture memento on the communion table. They were warriors as well of peace, of justice, of the momentous, powerful, beautiful words of Paul. We understand the imperative to continue the resistance in their individual ways. All of ours who are named spent their lives for peace. Salvation Army has a wonderful saying that they use at funerals. They speak of being promoted to glory. Because for all of us, the true enemy of life is not death. It's forgetting, it's fear. Just to know that you, O Holy One, pray our names. In many ways, that's what we do every Sunday, isn't it? We remember those voices of biblical witness. Every Sunday, they lived thousands of years ago, many thousands in some cases. Paul, a couple of thousand of years ago. He's here very much alive. Listen to his words. You heard them. They're powerful. Who shall separate us from them? We say as faith communities, nothing. Neither trial nor tribulation, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, sword, and for 2,000 years we've seen all of that and more. Think of the regime they lived under. In the face of every evil, of death, of hatred, of war, of climate change, of Holocaust, of cruelty, of anything that can separate us and those we have loved and those the world has loved and lost, we defiantly remember, defiantly do not fear, we defiantly live. So today we welcome the saints, we welcome the cloud of witnesses, our ancestors, our parents, grandparents, all our relations, our children. We welcome them back. Welcome back. It's not like they ever really left anyway, is it? For we are indeed more than conquerors, writes Paul. And I remember I saw that emblazoned on T-shirts of kids in the Bronx when I was down at Riverside one year. These kids that had nothing, and they had these T-shirts, hashtag, we are more than conquerors. That was their logo. C.S. Lewis once said, he was quite the wit, he said, God gifted Paul with many gifts, but one of them was not clarity. But it seems to me in this passage that he was most clear, most transparent. He was writing in Corinth, and he was writing to the church in Rome, and he was a Roman citizen, so he didn't face crucifixion. No, he was just beheaded, most likely, scholars tell us, in the first century. But he lived to witness the hunting and the killing of every single one, just about, of his friends in faith. And yet, his words survive, and they've survived so many horrendous regimes. They're not utopian, they're eminently practical. They are the recipe for freedom, justice, for the resistance to evil that is the call for all of us. We will stand with them, for we are loved. We are loved, and we've been called to love, and there's no sentimentality about that either. That kind of love knows death. It looks at death directly, and it says, like a defiant child, you don't rule me. You won't slow me down. You will not stop me from loving my enemies and my neighbors. You won't stop me from praying those names, and you won't stop me from having my own name prayed. Might I suggest that the pledge we make today in our hearts is this one. It's the pledge of peace. I will stand in front of tanks. I will march with the thousands. I will, if necessary, be a protest of one. I will appear in the courthouses and in the legislatures and in the arenas. I will sit at the front of the bus. I will take the back seat to those more marginalized than I am. I will demand that the desecration of our earth be stopped. I will stand with those in prisons. I will be with those in war zones. I will be with those suffering. I will over and over again meet hatred with love. I will meet horror with courage. I will meet perpetual war with perpetual demands for peace. I will be that one left standing, even when others have left, at all the crosses in all the world. I will be that faithful, because I'm not alone. You are with me. You comfort me. Your rod and your staff are with me. You sacrificed for me. You showed me the way home. You made a place for me in the presence of my enemies. You prayed my name into very existence. And you pray my name past death. As the congregation prays names today, we hear your voice, for you are here. You pray with us, just to know that you pray my name. In a sense of honor, faith, and never forgetting, the offering will be received.